So probably a lot of you know me as one of the people who does readings on the third Sunday Energy Share. And I do, like Gladys said, I do astrology, I do intuitive readings, I do tarot, I do a little of everything. And it's been kind of a long journey. I mean, it's hard for me to get my mind around the fact that I started 40 years ago doing this, but it seems like it was kind of just about 10. But, okay. But really, when I first started, I just had this burning desire to do this. And much later, many years later, I learned from my astrology that this was in my astrology to do this. And so there was never any way I was going to do anything else. It just seemed that way. Like maybe there were other options, but I was never going to be happy doing anything but doing metaphysics. So when I can even remember being excited about dreams when I was a little kid. I can remember having this dream where I got my mother's car, and I was 6 years old, and I drove it into a tree. And I asked my mother what that meant, and she said, "I don't know, but you better not do that." Because already I was kind of like a troublemaker, a little bit. So then fast forward to many years later, that I began to be more and more curious about dreams, and I wanted to work with dreams. But I didn't really know how, because this was, like you said, in the 80s, no internet. And at that time that I started working with dreams, I was living in the woods. And it was like out in West Washington County, and we had electricity but no running water. And we lived in a series of sheds. And there's probably a lot of people that don't know that about me, but we built the sheds, my husband and I at the time. And so there was a shed that was the main shed, and then there was the shed that we slept in, which was down the hill. And these were all small sheds. And then I had an office shed eventually. So I wanted to work with dreams. And at the time, there was this thing called the Human Potential Movement. Does anybody remember that?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And it was Wayne Dyer, Shakti Gawain, people like that. And so I would go down to Passages and get these cassettes and listen to them. And there was this one guy, Stephen LeBerge, and he was a dream researcher. And I got his tape, and I'd listen to it over and over again. And I really believed, that I could do this. That he was talking about keeping a dream journal, remembering your dreams at night, and he had different techniques for that. It was just important to get a lot of sleep and to record your dream as soon as you wake up. So that was really hard for me at the time, because I was working in Fayetteville, and I had to be at work at 7:30 in the morning. And so I'm not a morning person, so I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had to walk up this hill to where the main cabin was to get ready for work. And so I had this micro cassette recorder. And so as I was walking up this hill, I would be saying my dream. This is the only time I had to say this dream, was this period of time until I got to the top of the hill. So I'd be like huffing and puffing, and it'd be like, and then, and then later when I got home from work, I would listen to the tape, and it would be so hard to understand what I was saying because I was gasping for air. But then I would write down everything that I could remember, and then I had all these like dream dictionaries and things, and I would interpret my dream. And it went on from there. And it was kind of amazing. At first it was touch and go, and I got better at it as I went. And then eventually I would remember several dreams per night. And that wasn't every night, but it was happening on a fairly regular basis. So one of the times, I hadn't been working with dreams very long. And I had this dream that I was flying. And it was a lucid dream. And it was like, I call it like beginner's luck, I guess, because I didn't yet think, oh, wow, man, that's really hard to have a lucid dream, let alone a dream where you're flying, which is like astral projection. But in the dream, I was just flying along, and I was like, wow, I'm like awake and I'm in my dream, and this is so cool. And then I thought, but how am I doing this? How am I, when you start to think about how you're doing it, you're going to wake up. So don't ever do that. But it's been said that like a few minutes, even 30 seconds in a lucid dream will give you insights and awareness that years of study cannot give you. Books and workshops. The lucid dream is the moment when you are awake. And Thoreau, I'm not sure he was talking about lucid dreams, but there was a quote by Thoreau where he says, in dreams, okay, our truest life is when we are in dreams awake. So nobody really knows if that's what he was referring to, but maybe he was. So my goal in talking about this today is to describe my journey, a little bit of becoming an intuitive, and the role that dreams played in that, which was, there's really nothing else that could have taken me there. Because what dreams do is they harmonize your conscious and subconscious minds. And for me, it was the beginning of so many things to be able to receive these messages, because this part of you that knows everything that's going on and gives you these messages at night. And it's totally objective. I mean, it's not like somebody's coming up to you and saying, hey, you need to work on this and you need to do that. Because a lot of times our ego would go, well, who are you? But, when you're working with dreams, your subconscious mind is always talking to you about something that you need to know about in order to grow and live your purpose. So it's never like, everything is essential that you know. And usually what happens is the information that you receive in the dream is talking to you about your waking consciousness for the last 24 hours, although not always. So it's telling you something that you need to know in order to make decisions or, go about your day. So, trying to think of a good example of that, but there's a lot of times when I've been able to get a message from a dream that I needed to make a decision right then. And, okay, does anybody ever think of their waking dream as being like a regular dream? It's like, have you ever done that where you interpreted what was going on in your day as like you would a dream? Because dreams, your nighttime dreams are reflecting to you the same thing as your daytime dream. They're both one and the same, really. So I found that people that I worked with who were not able to remember a dream, or when I didn't have time to wait for a dream, that I would take what was going on, what the symbol was, and I would interpret it and get the message of it. So like one thing that happened to me was that I had a plumbing problem, and water was getting all on the floor, and it was like, oh my God. And I said, but wait a minute, there's a message in this. I need to get the message of what this is. So then I sat down with it and wrote it out. And what it was water is flow. So life experiences flow. So at the time, I was feeling like there was too much flow. There was too much going on, and I was feeling overwhelmed. And so I needed a pressure regulator. And that's literally what I needed on my plumbing. But I needed a pressure regulator on my life too. So they're both the same. So if you can't remember your dream, or if you need to know right then what's happening in the moment, then you can just sit down and work with dream symbols to figure out what's happening right now. So dreams have sometimes been called the doorway to the soul, because it allows us to access that part of ourselves that is, that we in our conscious mind are not always able to access. But I will tell you this, that years of working with dreams helped to build, for me, kind of like a bridge to my subconscious. So after a while, and I didn't even notice this happening, but I reached the point where I could go into my subconscious just from my waking mind. Just go in and say, hey, what's going on here? I need to know this. Sometimes I would do it like with automatic writing. I would sit in my journal and I would write out questions, and then I would just kind of go into a soft focus and just, keep writing. Not pick my pen up, just keep going. And even though it felt like sometimes I'd lost the connection, but then I'd pick it back up. And when it was done, I would have this understanding of what was going on. So, and then eventually I began doing channeling, and channeling is basically where you go into your subconscious and you pull out information. And we've done that here. We had evening of channelings. We used to do them on the eclipses. Dodie and Jackie and I and Melissa, and it was a lot of fun. It's good to have several people doing it, because we all had a specialty, and there was no one of us that was good at doing everything. So it was a lot of fun to do that. But once you work with your subconscious and get your conscious and subconscious harmonized by working with dreams a lot, you're able then to be able to access your subconscious. Now, you want to make the circumstances good for that. You need to be quiet and meditative, and a lot of times if I'm too tired, I can't do it. And but I can always sit down. That's when I start working with my waking dream, because if I'm too tired, I'm not going to channel. But the best part about this is that you're basically starting a dialogue with your higher self. So like with dreams, it's like sometimes you're able to decide you want to have a certain kind of dream. And it's called dream incubation. And it's like before you go to bed at night. And I can tell you this works perfectly. And I didn't realize how well it works until I was doing silly stuff like, where you watch your tablet, you got a movie going on the tablet, and you fall asleep, and you take that movie right into your dream with you. And I said, well, if that works, then I know this dream incubation and stuff is going to work real well. So then I started kind of setting the stage for it, and I'd think about, what am I working on right now that I could use some help with, and ask to kind of go into a place and, to just have a dream about it, or to see what's going on. And a lot of times I'll get some really good information. I'll wake up and I'll go, and I'll just know. And even if I don't remember the dream, I will go, I know exactly what the answer is when I wake up. And that's all I need is the answer. So, this is called this communication with your dream self, your subconscious, is called the universal language of mind. And this is in symbols and in images. It's not in words. And it's like anybody, anywhere, regardless of what language they speak, can receive these images from their higher self. So that's one thing I really love about it, is it's universal. So, like I said, over time, as you work with this connection with your subconscious, then you will be able to develop your intuition. Now, you don't have to have the goal in mind of being a psychic or an intuitive or an astrologer or any of that in order to benefit from developing your intuition. Because you can use your intuition for anything that you do in the course of your day, in the course of your life. There's a lot of things that I use my intuition for that has nothing to do with channeling or any of the metaphysical stuff I do. And I can't even imagine what my life would be like now if I had not developed this in my life. So that's why I'm always so interested in sharing that with other people, because it's a simple thing. And you don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have a lot of tools. I mean, you can just have a dream journal. And nowadays, you don't even have to have a dream encyclopedia, because you can go on to the Google AI and you can type in meaning, dream meaning, and then type whatever the dream was, and it'll give you a list of things to choose from. So it's cool. We didn't have that back in the 80s. So one of the things about dreams is that, as I was saying about interpreting a dream according to the symbols, is that sometimes dreams are multi-layered. A dream is always going to be true at the basic level. You can always receive a message just based on, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. But sometimes there's other things going on in the dream that make this dream something else too. Because it could be a lucid dream. It could be like a precognitive dream. It could be telling you about something that's going to happen. So like there are some famous instances of people being able to use the precognitive dreams, and this is also kind of like a reoccurring dream, but supposedly Abraham Lincoln kept having a reoccurring dream that he was going to die in the weeks before he was assassinated. So that is a precognitive dream, and it's a reoccurring precognitive dream. So, and a dream can be about your health too, even though it's about, you can interpret the basic part of it, but you can also look at it like, what's going on? Are you in a car? Because the car is your body. Because in your waking life, the car is how you move through life. That's how you get from point A to point B. But in a spiritual way, your body, your physical body, is how you get from point A to point B. It's like your vehicle in this lifetime. So if you have a dream that there's something wrong with your car, you might want to get that checked out, not just your car. It could be your car too, but it's a health dream. And a lot of times we get that. And like if you have a flat tire in a dream, it might mean that you're burning the candle at both ends, that you're exhausted, you're not taking care of, you need more self-care, or it could be something more than that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything, I've never seen anything like this, but I think it'd be interesting to know like which parts of the car associate with which parts of the body. Have you ever seen anything like about that in any of the books that you read?
There may be, I don't remember seeing anything like that, but I think that like a lot of things with dreams, you can reason it out, because like if it was an engine problem, and I'd be concerned about that, that would kind of speak to maybe, is it like your circulatory system or something?
Typical thing is if you have a crack in your windshield, particularly if it's straight down the middle, you and your significant other are having problems that need to, and so on.
That's interesting. I never thought about that, but it makes sense. And I would wonder if that could also have another meaning of, whether you're seeing things clearly in your life, your ability to see, because you can always reason them out, but dreams can have more than one meaning because they have multi-layers. So, another thing, they can be a past life dream too. And I actually had a past life dream recently, even though I could interpret it like as would a regular dream. but I knew that it was because this was set in the 1800s and everything was authentic to the 1800s. And I'm not like a history buff. I'm like, there's a lot of things I would remember and go, oh yeah, that, you know. But that's not stored up here. And dreams have to draw from your conscious mind, your computer, your brain, for the images that they're giving you. So it was really fascinating because in the dream I was going to a healing center in the mountains. And it was, like I said, 1800s. Everybody was dressed as they normally would be in the 1800s. And they were digging a grave up when I got there. And it was a friend of mine that I know. And I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you digging up a grave? I was a little bit upset about it. And anyway, we didn't get to exactly why till later. But it turned out that they were trying to establish that the person who had run the center was enlightened. And if she had not decomposed in the grave, then that would mean that she was enlightened. And that is not something that is in my mind at all. But the thing was that you could also interpret it as my subconscious telling me that don't be afraid of death because we are eternal. And, that part I got too. But I also felt like that this actually was probably a past life too. So it's fascinating, and another thing that I think is fascinating is I call it time travel. That, in your dreams you can ask to be shown things. Like, for example, if you feel like that maybe there was something that happened, at a point in the past that you maybe you got blocked, or maybe something happened that was traumatic and maybe you're remembering it wrong, or you just want to go back and see what really happened and see if there's something that you can do to release that. And so you can ask to be shown, you can ask to go in a dream and go back to that. You can also go into the future to say, if I take this course of action, and where's this going to take me in the future? And so you can ask to be shown, where's this going? What's the possible future here? And I really like that. I think that's an exciting thing to be able to do with dreams. Thing that's exciting to do with dreams is to ask for steps to release habits. Have you ever had a habit that you tried to get rid of and let go of, but it kept persisting? It seems like the more you try to get rid of it, it's like Scotch tape. Trying to get it off of you and it stays, it keeps sticking on you. And so I found that dreams can be helpful. And working with my subconscious, I'll say, what do I need to do? And give me some steps to what I can do. And one of the things that I was shown was that it really is, it's like some people say it takes 21 days to change a habit. But really it's more of a being present thing. Because if I decide today that I'm going to stop, something like eating chocolate or whatever it is, the bad thing, and so if I do okay today, and I don't do that, because the first day is like when your determination is really the strongest, and then the second day I'm somebody who has already done one day, so I'm different, and then the third day I've done 2 days. So it's just a real simple process, but sometimes my subconscious will give me insight into why I have that issue to begin with. What am I seeking from that? And, sometimes it goes back to certain things that have happened that I'm seeking, like a comfort zone thing. So one of the things that dreams often talk to me about is ways that I'm being disorganized. And I know it's really hard to believe that Sagittarius would be disorganized. So anyway, I have these reoccurring dreams where it's like for a while I'll do really good and then something will happen and everything gets disorganized, and all of a sudden I'm beginning the disorganization dreams again. It's like, hey, we need to, get a little more focused and a little more organized and clearing out stuff, letting go of stuff, and a lot of it's about letting go of stuff. Both my parents were hoarders, so, I became a hoarder too, so now I'm like, nope, gotta let go. And if I stop doing that and stop working at that, I'll start to get dreams about it again. It's reoccurring dreams. Another thing is, if you're an artist or a writer, you can get a lot of help from dreams. Like if I'm working on something, a project, a lot of times I'll get some kind of insights in my dreams, or I'll start to play the storyline out in my dream. And I'll get a lot of insight that way. And I get a lot of creative ideas, and that's why I try to journal. I do journaling every day too, and I try to journal as early in the day as possible, while a lot of that dream energy is still with me. Even if I don't actively remember a dream, a lot of times the energy is still with me. You can also solve problems. Like Einstein is known for having, he was working on part of the theory of relativity, and he would like get to a place where he couldn't finish the part, and he'd go have a nap, and then after he got up, he would know what the part was, or maybe it would be a day or two later. And dreams I don't always get the meaning like the next day. If I ask for guidance or assistance, I don't always know the next day. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 days until somehow or other the conditions are just right. And all of a sudden I'll wake up and I'll go, I got it now. But if I ask, I find that it always comes in one way or another. And sometimes it's in a dream, and sometimes it just comes into my consciousness. A lot of times people just want to have peace too, and it's like there's a peacefulness that we can get from our subconscious that helps us to sort of have that more in our waking lives too. And so we can ask for that. We can ask to have more peace and more calm, and be able to respond to situations that stress us out in a little calmer way. And as a fire sign person, I value that a lot. And here's the thing, a lot of famous people have been dreamers and have used dreams in various ways. Like, does anybody ever read Frankenstein?
Say it again.
Frankenstein, the book?
Sure.
Mary Shelley received a lot of that in a dream. There's some famous poems, but they're not as well known. Handel, The Last Movements of the Messiah, from a dream. A Danish physicist received the model of an atom in a dream. Muhammad, the Quran was a dream. And Harriet Tubman received routes for the Underground Railroad in dreams. There were 19 successful trips. Also, Gandhi received information in dreams to do the mass nonviolent strikes that eventually helped to overthrow British rule. So there's a lot of people who have used dreams in various ways to benefit themselves and others too.
Jung used it, and so did Freud, used dreams for interpretation. In fact, they say Jung knew about World War II ahead of time because of all the dreams he was getting from his clients.
Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I think Jung used
It is.
dreams a lot too.
Pardon?
Carl Jung.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of what Dolores Cannon did, where she would hypnotize people and get information from their subconscious. It's kind of a similar thing, but okay. Example of dream symbols. This is kind of a fun thing. You ever had a dream about an insect? Yeah. It's talking to you about a habitual way of thinking, because insects and animals are considered to be sort of instinctual. So it's talking about some way, some habit that you have. And you can look to see about what the function is, what it's doing in the dream, to see what kind of habit it might be referring to. The details, as they say, the devil is in the details. But, you'll always want to, dreams are always very specific to you also. So, and it says, one of the things that's a really valuable thing to receive that kind of information about habits that are holding you back in life. Because otherwise you become a prisoner of limited thinking. So your dreams will always try to make you aware of things that you're doing, habits that you have that are not serving you very well. Okay, clothing, outer expression. You ever have a dream where you're naked?
Oh, yeah.
All the time?
A lot. Walk in the streets.
Hmm?
Walk in the street in between people.
Yeah.
And
It's about openness and honesty. It's some way that you are, and it's usually talking about your last 24 hours, but not always. So some way that you're being very open and honest. And sometimes in the dream, you're being open and honest, but then you start to think, well, maybe I shouldn't be. So that's where you're like looking for clothes.
habits.
Right, and transparency, is like a lot of people are like that. And I know it's a Sagittarius trait as well, where we just like, no subterfuge, we just like say whatever comes into our mind. But yeah, and in the age of social media, it's also another thing that you can do where you overshare on there. And we talked about flying dreams, astral projection. It's at being able to fly in dreams is really exciting. So if you can incubate that, that's really a lot of fun. I think it says that you have a sense of freedom. It said that you're looking for a sense of freedom or you have it. So
It would be like astral projection, or would be just a what would be the difference?
between,
Because sometimes I do get conscious while I'm dreaming. I say, okay, I'm dreaming. So I'm going to check if I can fly. I know I'm dreaming. So, and I started to fly.
mhm.
So it would be that me having an out of body experience, or was just a dream?
It could be both.
Can be both.
Yeah, because dreams are always going to be true at the basic level, even though they are something else.
Sometimes we get confused because we don't get very lucid. Like you feel like you're kind of drunk.
Right, and you can get right up on the edge of being lucid without being fully lucid. And I do that a lot. Like if I'm having a dream I don't like if I'm like, what if my animals is missing or something's going on and I'm looking for something, or I didn't do something I was supposed to do, and I'll get right up on the edge of it.
Yeah, but then with
And I'll think, and part of me will even go, wait a minute, maybe this is just a dream. Maybe it's not
let me
really
change.
happening. And that's an opportunity when I could say, okay, I'm gonna be lucid in this dream, but you don't quite make it. And one of the things you can do if you wanna be lucid in a dream is to go around during your daytime, your waking life, and go around and say, am I dreaming or am I awake? Am I dreaming or am I awake? And if you keep saying that during your conscious time, then sooner or later when you're in a dream, you might go, am I waking, am I awake, or am I dreaming? Yeah, and there's things that probably should get our attention, like, the classic ones are like pigs flying, or you see a purple elephant in the room, or you see, all kinds of weird things that, there's been things that I've seen in dreams where I thought, now what is that? I just thought that's pretty weird. And it's like, if you keep thinking of those things or set your intention for those to wake you up or give you a trigger inside a dream, you're more likely to have a lucid dream. But anything that's kind of weird or too to something to be true. Or, there's a part of you that's a little skeptical that, if you saw it in your waking life, you would go, what's that, kind of thing. Then that's the kind of thing that might wake you up to the fact that you're having a dream. Fences in dreams could be talking to you about limitations that you have. Earth is subconscious. Okay, so this is a good one. I often have dreams where I'm in the woods or I'm out in nature somewhere. And those are dreams that are talking to you about your subconscious. Because the earth, anything to do with woods and earth is subconscious. If you have your computer is in your dream, then that's your brain. Fire is about expansion. So every dream is about you. Every person in the dream is about you. So it represents some aspect of yourself. So, like, let's say you have your cousin Norma is in the dream. And it's not really a dream about her, it's about some characteristic that you have in common with her, that your dream is using her as shorthand to say. So you think of the first two traits of her, like if you say, well, she's got a good sense of humor and she's always late. Well, that's what the dream is trying to talk to you about, maybe one of those traits. So it's always funny, everything in the dream, even the rooms, even the houses, everything is you in some way or another. So, and houses are interesting because are you in a house that's yours? Or are you in a house that's not yours? So you're in somebody else's house? Are you sort of like in someone else's mind, or like you're kind of visiting a place in consciousness that's sort of like someone else?
Or are you,
Is that within 5 minutes after your dream ends, you've lost 50% of it, and within 10 minutes you've lost like
Yeah.
90%.
like if you go to the bathroom and come back, it's gone,
yeah.
it's gone.
If you can at least, but it does help to write down trigger
Yeah,
words that
trigger
might
words.
trigger your memory.
But
And
some,
basically, some dreams seem kind of scary, but when you get down to the root of it, a nightmare is when your subconscious has been trying to get your attention to tell you something, but you're not paying attention. So what happens is it'll keep telling you over and over, and then eventually it will start coming up with these nightmares and that to get your attention.
Even as a child?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Is it a past life that they're trying to get you to remember as a kid, or it's just something you're not paying attention to as a kid?
Well, a nightmare, I mean, I don't know, I guess it could also be multi-layered, but generally speaking, a nightmare is your subconscious yelling at you. But, it could also be making you aware of something that from another lifetime that's, continues to haunt you now that you can't get a hold of because it's not in your conscious mind. So there, like I said, dreams are multi-layered, just because it's true at the basic level, there's all these other things that could be going on inside a dream that are specific to you. So, it's like, what does this mean to you? What does this symbol mean to you? It may have a different connotation to you than it does to someone else too. So it's still at the basic level true, but it also may mean something to you that based on something that happened to you years ago. And the universe could be using shorthand to say, hey, remember that thing that happened? So.
I've had recurring dreams for decades about my childhood home in Indiana, and in the dreams, the floor is always like, there's one floor I can't go on because it's dilapidated and you could fall through and you have to walk along the edge. And I've been doing EMDR therapy lately to work through childhood trauma. It's very powerful, deals with your subconscious. And I had a dream about my childhood home in Indiana, and it's been remodeled, and like the floor was solid, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that's great. That's what you're getting direct feedback from your subconscious that the work, and we can, like she's saying, we can work with other modalities other than dreams to get at the issues that we have that we need to work on. And dreams may very well come back and reflect that, hey, you're doing great, keep going.
May I add? And it may seem like a nightmare, because when I was about, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years old, when you have a reoccurring nightmare that the golden Buddha kept on running after me, and I fall, like a movie, you fall, and I'm this little kid turning around, and there's Buddha, golden Buddha, just going like this, and it's so scary when you're a kid, because you're like, why is the golden Buddha doing this to me? And I wake up, and I'm like, okay, close my eyes, and there's Buddha there, waiting for me, and I close my, wake up, and I close my, there it was, Buddha. So that's nightmare for a child, but in adult sense, well,
Well, maybe a kid would
It wasn't a nightmare.
interpret something in one way that
Yeah.
might not, and that happens a lot, where we might interpret something
Yeah.
as being scary
yeah.
or frightening to us,
Yeah.
and I think that that's another reason why being able to travel back to see what really happened in a dream.
Yeah.
Maybe we misunderstood something that was happening,
It was.
and that's why going back in time, and they do that with hypnosis too, but you can do it with dreams. Yeah, and then once you get the message of it, and you write it down and you interpret it and you decide, a response to be able to deal with it, sometimes it goes away.
There's another way to use the dreams proactively, is if you have a dream and you try to interpret it and you don't understand it or you don't remember it. So what you can do is just before you go to sleep and you're in that quiet state, focus on that dream, ask for insight to understand that dream more, and you may have another dream that'll be related to that dream. And you can actually do this regularly and track down a deeper insight by proactively doing it and focusing on it before you go to sleep.
Yeah, that's a form of dream incubation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can always ask for anything in your dream. If you're getting ready to go to sleep, you can ask for anything to have any kind of clarity. And sometimes if I have a dream, I'll wake up from it and I'll think, wow. And then sometimes I'll try to go back into the dream, go back to sleep and continue a little ways. So that way I can see what really was going on here. It's another way of doing it.
I don't even have to try.
Okay, and this is another little bit about people in your dream. So a person who's the same sex is a conscious aspect. A person who is the opposite sex is a subconscious aspect.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Say it again.
The sex of the person, like a character in your dream, a person, maybe a person you know or don't know, if it's the same sex as you, it is a conscious aspect. So it's somebody you know, or it's something an aspect of yourself that you're familiar with. And an opposite sex would be subconscious, or maybe an aspect of yourself you don't know, or less familiar with.
And another aspect of that is if it's a young, say for me as a female, it'd be a fairly new subconscious aspect. If it's an old female, that'd be in my dream, that's an old, well-established subconscious.
Yeah, and the
aspect.
age does have something to do.
Yeah, so you can play with that and track it down.
And a baby is often a new idea.
Mhm.
So, and that's why, I think when I was in school of metaphysics, we studied the book of Matthew, I think it was that where they were gonna kill all the babies or something, and it was that was what they were talking metaphorically about, so when you have an idea, protect it, because don't put it out into the world until you're ready, until it's able to live on its own, because other people will try to kill it. Did you ever have that happen where, it's like you said, well, I had an idea to do this, and then people are like, well, I don't think that's a good idea. Writers are particularly protective of that. Actions of dream people. So everybody in the dream is either helping you or holding you back in some way. So that's an interesting thing to pay attention to. That's something I don't really pay that much attention to because I usually, everything seems to be pretty cool in my dreams, but, I have a lot of dreams that I think are maybe parallel realities that are just like my reality, but a little bit different. And I just go and it's like I just kind of plug right into these realities that are, totally similar, but not the same. So I think there's a lot that we still don't know about dreams, and we have to kind of catalog our dream images to begin to really explore what's going on inside our own subconscious. Okay, another example of dream people, authority figures. That's talking about your superconscious mind. Parents, boss, president, minister. And that's why a lot of people, I think, automatically accept an authority figure as being somebody they have to listen to, even though that person may not be someone you want to listen to. So maybe in the dream it will be talking about, whether you can trust this person or whether you should, instead of just blindly trusting them. A spouse is generally considered an aspect committed to wholeness because you're trying to, that's your soulmate, or you're trying to create that wholeness with another person. Police and military represent discipline. Did you ever have the police show up in your dream? Actors are using, talking to you about how you're using your imagination. Okay, and another thing about houses is, have you ever had a dream where you've got something under construction, like a new house? So that's where you're building a new place in consciousness. I love those kind of dreams, but they don't come around very often. A hotel is universal mind. A church is spirituality. Office is a place of learning. Hospital for healing. Theater is imagination. A foreign country is an unfamiliar condition.
Oh, what now?
Unfamiliar condition. University, also learning. A town or a city is where many aspects are connected. And then, of course, the park or forest is subconscious experience. So, techniques for remembering dreams. Keep a dream journal. I used to have this dream journal that had like a holographic cover. You ever seen those holographic? It was special. And now I just write them on scraps of paper because it's just more important to get the message.
Do you know if there's a difference between like typing into your phone journaling and writing it down journaling? Like, does it still help you to remember more if you type it into your phone?
Gosh, I've never typed it, but I think it's probably specific to you because how does your brain communicate? For me, I have a really hard time typing things directly into the computer. I write things into a journal by hand because that's the pathway that my brain uses to communicate. And if I were to try to do it, I've worked with voice dictation and I still will write it out by hand and then dictate it into the computer. It's just my little act of rebellion. But
they always say the more physically you're involved with something, the more it's going to work into your mind, like changing thoughts. You write them out first. It's much more mechanical and physical. It's more of you involved. And if you're typing them, it's kind of distant and, so if you're really trying to change a habit, you'd rather write it out. And then when you get familiar with the habit, then you can type it, then it's easier because it's already in your subconscious.
Right. And I wonder about the pathway of the brain that you're using to type, if it's the same as you would use for handwriting.
Deborah, in your things you look at in dreams, do you look at pathways and roads at all?
Roads?
Pathways, roads?
Well, it would also be important to know, is it a dirt road, is it a highway? So it's a place that's more commonly traveled, or is it a less traveled road?
Or if it's steep, if it's rugged, if it's going downhill.
Well, that probably talks about the path that you're taking for yourself. Is it, if it's uphill climb, you know, it's kind of like the Sisyphus kind of thing.
What's the significance of the dirt road?
Well, a dirt road, it depends, you know, is it going through kind of remote territory? Maybe that, once again, is subconscious. But it's probably also talking about a less traveled road, that you're kind of like out there choosing your own path in some way, forging ahead. So, yeah, there's so many dream symbols out there, and you just reason them out, you know, just use your reason as to how is it functioning in the dream. So also, getting back to remembering dreams, is just say, I will remember my dreams 3 times. Just set intentions. Even a short or partial dream. Now, the saying is, from my understanding, that if you, normally in the course of a night, you'll receive 3 dreams. The first one will be talking about what the issue is. The second will be talking about the solution. And the third will be talking about what's going to happen if you take action on this. So if you only remember a little bit of one dream, then you have to kind of extrapolate that outward and say, this was probably what the problem was, and this is, you know, so you have to figure all that out. As the more you work with dreams, then you begin to be able to do that kind of stuff where you can just take one piece of a dream and figure out the story that's being sent to you. Oh, and here's another one, visitation dreams. This is where somebody that's passed over visits you in the dream. Does that seem scary? Where you receive some kind of, you know, someone that's passed over maybe is telling you that you're all right, or is trying to give you some kind of information. So it's another kind of dream. And, you know, getting back to the health dreams, and it's not just a car, it could be a boat or a plane or any kind of vehicle that you're traveling in. If you have a dream about that, it could be talking about something to do with your health. Sometimes you'll receive those kind of dreams 3 months before you start to have symptoms. So there's a whole school of thought on health dreams. There's a lot to it. Misunderstandings and thinking produce limitations. It's another part of this is that if you understand some of the meanings of what's in your health dream, you can be talking about, like, if you have like anger, a lot of like aged anger that keeps showing up in your dreams, that can be pointing toward possibility of cancer. It's, you know, it's just good to get a health analysis if you keep having something like that showing up. And oh, here's a good thing. Precognitive dreams. Again, you'll be able to, like, if you keep a dream journal for 6 months, and then you go back over what you wrote down, and see how many of those dreams came true, and you'll get an idea of how often your dreams are precognitive.
So may I ask a question? So I had a dream recently, and it was, so I had a dream recently where I couldn't quite figure out the other person, but they were arguing. So this person was arguing, and there was another person here. I just remember that I couldn't, it must have been a conversation, but clearly this person was like angry or arguing. I not like screaming, but just talking like in somebody arguing. So you're saying, so earlier I heard you say that if it's people in the dream, it's not always about you, because sometimes it could be about somebody else in the dream, right, with people?
It's always about you,
Still always about you,
always about you.
even if there's multiple people.
Yeah.
But you're saying arguing, it can be an indication of cancer.
Well, no, anger. Repeated anger in a
Right.
dream.
Right.
But arguing is not
Louise Hay
necessarily.
says that the cause of all
Yeah.
cancer is suppressed anger. This is the first time I've ever had a dream about anger.
Well, and if you have people in your dream, were they people you knew?
I couldn't discern who they were.
Okay.
But
Because
it was
then
like
it could be
somebody
pointed-
was here and somebody was here.
You could be talking about parts of yourself that you don't know as well, since you either couldn't recognize them or you may not have known them. And it could be parts of yourself that are in disagreement over something.
Okay.
So, I mean, even though you can't identify who they were, you can try to identify what the disagreement was over. Because it's not, I don't think it's uncommon at all to have parts of yourself in disagreement. Because that's how we get stuck, is where, one part of you says, let's go for this, and the other part of you says, no, I don't want to do that. And that's why we're trying to harmonize our conscious and subconscious minds, is to get all parts of yourself on board with it.
I learned dream interpretation when I was in school of metaphysics many years ago, and they required us to have a journal. And we
I did it at school of metaphysics too. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
great.
And it was really good,
Yeah.
and it took a lot of discipline to do that. And I remember from, again, probably my perception, so I'm leading to a question, really. So it got to be was that most of the dreams that I experienced and that people dream, oftentimes they're not like real life, they're symbolic. You can feel they're symbolic. They're not got the same flow as life. But then every once in a while you get a dream that's like very real. And what I understood at the time in learning that was that when it feels very real, that's when it's precognitive. And I remember them saying that probably the percentage of the time that you have a precognitive dream, maybe only 5% of the time. What's your experience?
Well, number one, all dreams are still able to be interpreted at the basic level. Okay, some of them may also be precognitive dreams. And as you're asking me how often I think my dreams are precognitive, because I don't know about other people. I think it varies according to the person and according to how much they've worked with dreams and how focused their mind is. That has to do probably with their ability to project into a precognitive dream. Or even to recognize a precognitive dream. I think that some dreams are obviously precognitive and some are not. I think that that's why that's a good thing to do, is to go back over 6 months and see how many of those things actually happen. And you'll start to get a sense of what's true for you for a precognitive dream. But it's exciting when you have one. I know that much. But I found the same thing happened when I was writing fiction. I would start to write fiction, and then the fiction would happen. And that kind of was a little off-putting to me, but it's not that much different from dreams, because, your conscious waking dream is still reflecting your subconscious in some way. Anyway, that's pretty much what I got. If we have any time left, I'd be happy to interpret people's dreams or help you to interpret if anybody has any.